Hi, everyone. So we are just waiting for our lovely guest to join us. So excited to see some of you. Hi. Oh, it's the end of Pride Month. All right, let's see. Can M work the internet? I'm all gayed out. Maybe he's here. Maybe I did it right. Hi!
Hello!
It worked!
Yay! We're here.
Oh,
We're queer. It worked.
amazing. Well, thank you for joining us. So let me just start off with hi, everybody. It's Em, one of the board of director members from Project Heal. Thank you for joining us for the very end of Pride Week. And our week's theme was Color Outside the Lines, which who better to talk with us today than someone who's been doing that his whole career. So glad you're here. So I'm just going to introduce you and then we'll get started.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect. So everyone, this is Aydian. His pronouns are he, him. And with a breakthrough cover feature in Men's Health magazine, multiple appearances on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and nonprofit Point of Pride, helping over 13,000 trans individuals around the world. Aydian Dowling is a household name in the transgender community. His loyal followers have found strength and courage through Aydian's kindness, confidence, and vulnerability. Traits he also brings to his role of devoted husband and father. His dynamic public speaking, insightful consulting, and compassionate mentoring has transformed thousands of people into passionate allies for the trans community. With a new mobile app for transgender and non-binary folks, Trace, Aydian is continuing his passion for helping the community. And if you all download the app, you can find me on it and we can be journey buddies. Welcome,
Awesome.
Aydian.
Yeah, you can find me too.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm over here on the East Coast, so the day is, winding
We're
down.
halfway through.
Yeah, halfway through. Nothing wrong with that. Tomorrow's Friday.
Uh,
For those who work the Monday through Friday grinds, it's always nice.
Agreed. So how's your, what have you been up to this Pride and how's it been for you?
Yeah, Pride's been good, So I just moved to a new state, so I live in Florida now. So, I went to the Pride event in my town, which is outside Tampa. And yeah, it was fun. It was cool to meet everybody. They had a Transtastic event, which was really cool, like a very formal, time to get dressed up and hear music and queer artists and stuff. Yeah, and mostly just spreading the word about Trace, trying to let people know that there's finally an app for us, and not only to just, document our amazing journeys, but to connect with people too. So, I've really just been pumping the Trace train.
I mean, I'm glad you have. I feel like it's important, like you were saying, not just to document the physical part of this, right? But that we're people just like everybody else. We just want to have people in our corner too, and we want to share this journey with each other.
Right, exactly. And sometimes it's scary to share on social, you know what I mean? You just never know who's gonna stumble upon your comment section,
Yes, I do. I'm sure you do too. So, I mean, obviously you're here with Project Heal and we're here to kind of talk about your journey, your body, eating disorders, kind of how that's all affected you. And I'm wondering about what your idea of health is and being healthy and how that's impacted your relationship with food and your body.
Yeah, I think my version of health has shifted. I think everything we talk about is gonna be I used to think this way, and I've learned that maybe those ways weren't always the best ways to think. So I mean, I think I just always thought being healthy was athlete, right? Just being athletic, being thin, being muscular. That's that it was you're thin, you must be healthy. That's just how it was equated. And then as I got older, I think it was interesting because I think as I still believe that, I learned that it wasn't real. So I was holding two of these truths at the same time. And then the whole other aspect of health of just mental health started coming up too, and that became really prevalent, and acknowledgement that I wasn't mentally healthy in my past, and how can I make changes to do better there. And so I kind of started to learn to like meditate and like take in my emotion and do more journaling and stuff like that at the same time that my eating disorder started like kind of also like, you know what I mean? Like taking up space. So it was a very, very uneven balance of health in my world, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like eating disorders are these fun beasts that the minute you start to challenge anything that it's kind of grasped onto as a solid truth, right? The world is black and white. Anytime you bring in color, oh, it does not like that. It wants you
Yeah.
to go back to whatever that very concrete, very closed way of thinking is. And ironically, right, as trans people, our idea of how the world works and what the world is actually so vastly different than anything that's concrete to begin with. That's
Right.
got to be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like, so just like for a little context, like I
Please.
transitioned in 2009. So I've been on hormone replacement therapy for, I mean, coming on to 13 years, which feels crazy. And I think like for me, when I came out, I really thought that I would be happy if I was able to just look in the mirror and see like like, you know, a stereotypical binary cis looking man staring back at me.
Yep.
I was like, cool, that's how I'm going to be happy. Like, that's going to be like, when I achieve that, that's my mountain. Like, if I can get to there, I'll be able to be like, I'm fine. I don't have dysphoria. Everything's good, you know? And like, it was interesting because as I got closer, right, to that binariness and like, and this outside looking in was like, wow, like, yeah, you don't look trans, right? I didn't feel any better, but I just thought like, okay, well, maybe this is the part of the mountain where it's like, you know, like you don't know if you ever get into the top, but you can kind of see the top and the view looks kind of good from here, but you're going to keep going. And then, you know, I got like, you know, like metaphorically, like to the top of that mountain. And I looked around and was just like, this is not at all how I thought I was going to feel at the top. Like, I thought I was going to feel so good and feel like I found my true self. And it was like actually just trying to get to this outer shell of like society's deem of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
That actually was like probably, honestly, I was probably more miserable at that time because I was so hyper focused on my body than I was when I first came out, where I was just like, I put a binder on, I would be like, I look so good, this is so great, like I feel like I'm aligning with myself. And then it's like you cross this threshold where all of a sudden you're just like, you know, you don't feel good, you know. And that's why, like, I think that's one of the main reasons that I try to talk about it as best I can, you know, like through my own healing journey. And I try to like, this is one thing in my life that I've tried to respect, that like it's a continuous journey. And like maybe talking about the healing journey while I'm on it isn't the best for me in this arena. But like, so one of the main reasons I want to share this, because I just feel like we all feel that way in some capacity. Like, if my body looks a certain way, I'm gonna feel good about myself. And I got to what I thought that would be, and I didn't feel any better about myself then than I do now, not looking like that, and I did before not looking like that. So it's a fucking illusion. It's not real. It's not a real thing.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think I shared this when we met, right? One of, you know, the pieces of my journey was like taking on fitness to be healthy, i.e. to be thin, right? That thin and health are somehow synonymous. Right. Getting to the smallest I had ever been and being also the most miserable I had ever been, not being out yet, not having figured that piece out, and not wondering why, when my body was quote unquote perfect, nobody's ever perfect, right? That magically everything would be better, and it wasn't. And I feel like that's another kind of cultural lie we all live with regardless of your identity, which is there's a perfect body, and when you get there, everything will just be fine.
Yep. It's not. It's just, you know, it's not really, you know, it's an illusion. You know what I mean? It really is an illusion. And like, I think, you know, I think many of us, like you're saying, like we take the hard road to find that. And I hope that like the more we can talk about it, maybe, just maybe, some people will maybe stop halfway down the road or just not get as far and not create such a personally, like such a relationship with food where it's just still something I think about way more than I want to on a daily basis. And that dictates like how I'm feeling in that time, which like sometimes the food at an event, like I just don't feel as good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sucks. And I don't want people to like go through that, you know what I mean? And have to heal from that when maybe they don't, maybe, you know, you can hear from other people and, you know, we all have to experience our own things, but there's something to be learned about, there's something to like learn from other people's experiences too.
Agreed. You had actually said to us that you don't know it when you're in it. And I feel like I say that sentence literally every session I run, every group I run every day. I'm like, no, that's why you didn't know, because we don't know when we're in it. That's the secret. How did you figure out that you needed help? And like, was there a clear moment for you, or do you feel like it happened over time?
You know, I think that there was a clear moment that I knew I needed help, but I think accepting that took time. So I had, you know, I had like not, I had like worked, I was going to a concert with friends and I had worked out in the morning and I had eaten like just a little bit because I knew that I was going out. So I was like saving those calories for that concert, you know, and so I went to the concert and I really hadn't eaten much. And there was only like food that I at the time was deeming like unhealthy and like very like elitist in my thinking of food, like what, you know, and then I was like, I'm not judging you, but I would never eat that. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay. Okay.
I feel called out.
Yeah, right. You know? Oh man. And so like, I had a friend and so it was coming on many hours of not eating and I wasn't like starting to not feel that well. And my friends were just like, and my wife was like, just eat this. Like there's food here. Like you can eat, you know? And like to the point where like my one friend pulled us all aside and was like, I'll never forget. It was a Trevor Hall concert where they like pulled us out of the concert. We were near like this lake and we were just going at it for like an hour and a half, right before like we were about to miss the whole concert, and she was just saying like, this is not good, like you're not healthy right now, and like it hurts me to be a friend to see you this way, and it's affecting our relationship. And like we're really good friends with my wife too, and they're like, like you don't know it, but it's affecting your relationship with Jenny Lee too. Like this is something that has, like we've talked about this when you're not here, you know what I mean? And at the time it was like I was very defensive because I was just like, I just want to be healthy. And you know, I think being trans and having like, I have a lot of like body dysphoria, and so I think that was another thing I would lean on, you know what I mean, to kind of cover up what was happening, because it was like, well, you know, like this helps with my body dysphoria, and I think on some levels it did, but there's that line where it's like, okay, well, that helps with your body dysphoria, but all of this actually doesn't affect your body dysphoria. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of the moment that was the first thought of like, oh, like, wow, like my friends are talking about this. You know what I mean? But I kind of got defensive. I got very defensive.
Of course.
You know, and then my wife got pregnant, and a couple, like within 6 or 8 months of that time, and I forget, we were like making food or something, and I like wasn't going to eat something because I didn't know how much she put in it. I wasn't able to like track the macros of it, so I was like, I just won't eat it. And that was like a trigger for her, and she just was like, if you don't go to therapy and like get help for this, like I won't allow you to act this way in front of our child. I can't have you, I just can't. You can't bring this into this baby's life. You know what I mean? Like, and so that was like a really big moment, because it was like, wow, like, you know, like it was just a really intense moment in my life. And so that was like, I still was in disagreements, but I was like, here's like people I love and the person I love the most. And like, I was conscious enough to be like, I don't want my kid to like be scared of eating things or, like, so I started to go to therapy at that time. And that was a big life changer for me.
I'm so glad you did. And in my head, I'm trying to imagine having that conversation with my partner, and it just like, I'm sorry you both had to go through that. Like, it's not only is that terrible, but it's terrible that we live in a world that can't label for us the line in which things are dangerous and why they're dangerous, and like the reality of how we like capitalize on each other's bodies, and how you had to be like some kind of, part of that system in some way. And so I'm wondering if you feel like maybe part of this, you were saying, right, you knew that there was some body dysphoria going on. Do you feel like your relationship coming out changed things for you in progression of your eating disorder? Do you feel like it made things easier or harder?
Like with my relationship with myself or with my partner?
With yourself, like with your like with your own body image, and obviously then that affects everything else.
Right. Yeah, I think like I definitely had fears of like gaining weight and like just like internalized like fat phobia of just being like, if I gain weight, I'm going to look more feminine. You know what I mean? And that's going to make me really not like my body. And I started like what really helped for me with my body dysphoria is like to actually start looking around. So I think like it's kind of like, you ever look at a photo and someone's like, oh, did you ever notice there's like a penguin in the top corner? And you're like, what? And then you're like, oh my gosh, there's the penguin right there. And then you try to look at the photo that you've looked at so many times without seeing it. And you're just like, how did I never see that penguin, right? And it's because like you were not looking for it. And so what I noticed I was doing with the other like men around me was I was only looking for what society deemed like that perfect body. And I was like, they got it, they have it, they're tall, they have no hips, you know what I mean? And it was like, all like, it was like the horse, with the blinders. It's like I could only see what was right in what I was looking for. And so I started like unfollowing a lot of people that I was following on social media that had that society-based body. And I started following because I still love to work out. I still love fitness. I like to like feel strong in my body. And I like to like pick up heavy shit and put it down, like I like to do that. That's, some people like to, ride on two wheels for 80 miles in a day. I like to pick shit up and put it down. So I started looking at like focusing more on like bodies that did that rather than bodies that like watch everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like people who actually like, oh, like this person works out and like they train and they're into it, but like their body doesn't look like that thing I thought I would have to look like in order to be strong, to be healthy, and to feel good in my body. And so I started changing some of those things. And then I just really noticed like there are so many people with so many different bodies. And for so many years, I just stared at the same ones. And that's why I thought like, why don't I look like that? You know what I mean? And that really started to open up. Like it started opening up just like how I realized like what box I had put myself in when like as a queer trans person, like I spent so many years of my life like living outside of that box and like being really proud of that, so it was like, those are some of the ways that I've been able to like recognize like, hey, like you actually just look like a person. And like, I present binary because that's how I feel. And like most people are seeing me as a guy, like regardless of the things that my brain or like myself says like, you know what I mean? So yeah, just like getting outside of my own head,
Easier said than done.
Oh my God. It's every day. Like like
Agreed.
it really is this every single day, like, and like, I don't mean to say it in like a scary way, but it's like, it's every day, it's every meal, it's every occasion. Yep. And like, you know, but I always feel bad the day after I like don't do something because I let my eating disorder dictate how I acted in that moment, as opposed to when I push that voice away and I do what I wanted to do. I always wake up the next day and I'm just like, you know, like, I'm so happy that like we actually, like, I had that extra drink, or I ate that extra thing, or I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh, like I was able to just be present and not focused on this one thing that actually didn't change anything about like my relation I was having at that time, myself, my dysphoria, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's funny how that eating disorder voice like really will, it really like tells you, it's scared. Like for me, like my voice like was just like scared me into things. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, it would look like in the future, like, you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, this is a bad choice that's like gonna last forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's a catastrophizing where it's convinced you that that ice cream cone you eat today means you will die 80 years from now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, actually I will. Whether I eat this or not.
I'm gonna actually be pretty fine. Like, actually, I'm pretty fine. You know? Yep. Yeah, so definitely.
How has recovery progressed for you, and how do you feel like the fitness world has kind of impacted that?
I mean, I think like now, I think it's, you know, it's hard for me to say because I follow so many different people now. You know what I mean? Of all different like shapes and sizes, and also like ways in which they enjoy fitness. And like, I secretly always wish I could be a dancer, but I'm not good at dancing. But every time I follow like some like Zumba people, and I'm like, you know, I wish I could just like, you know, dance it out, you know, get that going. But you don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Nobody wants to see that. But like, so it seems like, but I might be disillusioned, right? Because of who I'm surrounding myself like. It seems like I've been able to find more people that just like to move their bodies in different ways. And that is actually what I'm more attracted to, is just like the movement and like the different modalities in which you move. Because my body likes to move. Like I like fidget, like my body always has told me like I like to do stuff. Like I like to move around, you know? And so, you know, but then I also like, I can't get my For You page to change Instagram. I've stopped following so many people. I still have all these like ripped dudes who like, you know what I mean, are like measuring things. And I'm just like, how do I stop this? Like I've literally, you know what I mean? Like I've tried.
I do.
But so many years, Instagram knows that like 7 years before 3 years ago, this is all you looked at. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I like to think that it's changing. I really do, you know, and I think like as an optimist, like I have to believe that it is, because then I just, you know, it's too bleak.
Yes. Yes, it is. Someday the For You page will be only full of things that we ask for.
I know.
So until then, they do not know what is for you.
It's, you know, I'm pretty like hooked on like bird and animal videos. So like it should be just full of birds. Like Bird on Planet or whatever. Like I'm all over those. Birds they put the arms on the birds. Have you seen those?
Yes, they're amazing with their little. We had chickens for a while, and we were like, let's get our chickens' little arms.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't. So I can't. That's what it should be filled with, but you know. Yeah.
No. Well, Instagram, if you're watching, Eden and I would like more birds videos, please. Birds with arms.
Please. More birds.
So I know when we were all talking, kind of preparing for this, we kind of had touched on some substance use, and I'm wondering, just because it's something that is so oddly not talked about enough in the eating disorder world, is this co-occurrence of things, right? How do you feel like substance use compounds an eating disorder and kind of leads to that further disconnection from your body and therefore obviously recovery?
Yeah. So like for me, so my like eating disorder showed up in a ways of just being like like orthorexic. So like you're kind of like really, there's safe foods and not safe foods. So that was very much me. It was like, this is safe and this is not safe. And so what I would do and like I would count macros and all of those things. And so what I always would do is like, I wouldn't eat the unsafe things, but I also smoked weed, and I don't anymore. I mean, mostly, honestly, like mostly surrounding my eating disorder. Like I've learned that like, I think weed saved my life a lot of times, just being able to like medicate in that way. And it came to a point where it was really unbeneficial to my life. And so cutting it out was a really great choice that I made. But what happened is like, so like the marijuana compounded with the eating disorder turned into binge eating. So it would be like, I would be quote unquote good all day, and then I would like smoke a bowl, and then I would eat until I like literally wanted to get sick. And then Sundays were my cheat day. And so I would just get high all day, and I would just eat and then smoke some more, like get full, smoke some more. It like turns off that trigger in your brain. Yep. I'd be like, I could eat more, and then I'd eat more. I'd get full, and like to the point where I really was like the food was becoming toxic to my body because I was eating so much of it at one time, and it really like it was just not good. Like it was really bad for me, and it again like it compounded like this orthorexicness in with binge eating, and it just continued in a cycle. It was just a very like repetitive, just like I was eating the same thing every day. I could tell you like exactly at what time on Sunday that I was going to be like in the middle of a day long binge, you know. Yep. And like, you know, I've worked with some clients, not in like the way you have, like you do a great work, but like I've consulted some people before, and just like, you know, it comes up a lot, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I think for some people, some substances are really great, and they can really be amazing at times in our lives, when we need that type of medicine. And I think that it's really powerful moment when we can recognize when that medicine is no longer helping us and maybe actually hurting us. And so actually since then, I've like since quitting, so it's been over a year now. It was February of last year. I've really been able to just be more present, and like that, you know, it doesn't disassociate me from my body, right? Because like I would like disassociate in a way through the marijuana, and then like continue to eat, you know. And so now I'm able to tap in more and be like, oh, you know what, like I'm like really full, and I actually like I want that, I want to eat that, but my body is saying like, boy, you're really full. Like you probably like don't overdo it. Like you had, like, look at what you had. It was really great. Like you're doing great. And like that is not going to be good, you know, which is kind of tricky, because when you go from orthorexia to binging, it's like the voices can get really conflated with one another, because one is telling you not to eat and to only eat these things, and then the other one is telling you to eat everything. And so sometimes you don't know who's talking to you. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, is this my binge voice saying to eat all of this stuff? Or is this like my orthorexic voice saying like, don't eat any of it, you know? And finding that like middle ground is usually where I try to like stay. Just because either side, restricting or binging, is just, both of them are really hurtful to me and my body.
Yep. And I mean, it's like you're saying, they, not to make a pun, but they do feed each other, right? If you restrict all the things you like all day, then when you're not in your body and you're dissociating at night and they're available, you give yourself permission, because you're not cognizant, to take away permission. And then it becomes a whole thing.
Right. You know, it's like, I always picture myself like, I'll probably like, I'm hoping that like, I would like smoke weed again in my life. Like I always think, have you ever seen 40s? What's it called? 40? It's like the show with Paul Rudd, the movie with Paul Rudd.
Yep.
This is 40.
This is 40. Yep.
You
Were
know,
they?
I just
Yep.
we just got like super stoned together in a hotel room and just like laugh and jump in the bed. I'm like, I'm gonna save it for that. One day I'm gonna do that. Maybe in like 15 years, hopefully I'll be even more healed in myself and my body, and like, just have a good time. Like, I like I think like the thing is too is like I have like zero judgment, and like I know how helpful, like
Yep.
weed is for a lot of people, and it helped me a lot. So I think there's that also. There's always that line, right, of like, okay, well, at what moments is this helping me, and as at what moments is this actually hurting me? You know what I mean? So for me personally, I was just like, okay, I think that I've crossed the line, and I gotta reevaluate where I'm at and what's going to be good for me and my body.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, I know that your wife worked in eating disorder treatment, and I'm wondering how that impacted both not your eating disorder, but kind of the recognition of having one and accepting treatment, and what that process was like for you both.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think like, so the friend also worked with her.
Okay.
So, I've never actually talked to her about this. I've never talked to Jaylee about this. And I feel like it's maybe I feel like I'm at a time where I actually could hear and like really hear what she was going through at that time. So thanks for kind of asking that question. I feel like that's a great opportunity for me to like, I'm going to use this conversation as like an into that conversation. I'll be like, so today I was thinking, so I think like, and I don't want to speak for her, but if I had to energetically like tune in, I think she knew, but maybe it's always harder when it's someone you love and and you have a relationship with. And so I think like her, because it was our friend, but it was her friend originally that brought into our relationship that became our friend. And so I think that like maybe I'm sure that she had conversations with Jane Lee and saw this and like just felt like it was her duty as like a friend to bring it up and stop letting it just kind of skate by, and so I think like for that in our relationship, like it was hard, honestly. It was really tough. And I know that like for me it was tough, so I'm sure it was tough for her. And like I think it was helpful to have somebody who knew some of the things, but again, I think it made me real like I was very defensive, and I don't want to sugarcoat that at all. Like I was very defensive and very like I remember my first day in therapy, I was, my therapist was like, asking me why I'm here and things like that. And I just was like, I'm here because my wife said I have to be here. And like, I don't really, I don't really think there's anything wrong. I think I'm just a healthy guy who likes to work out and I like to watch what I eat. Like I had created my mantra of why I do what I do, and I had fully believed and attached to that. So I can't. I'm having trouble finding words because I haven't had that conversation with her, and I really feel like it's time to do that. And so, yeah, like I said, like it's not something that it still comes up. Like sometimes I think, sometimes she'll like look at me and ask me in a certain way. Like we've been together for like 12 years, so I can tell when she's asking me like, so why aren't you doing this, or why are you doing this, or and then it helps me kind of be like, okay, why am I okay, no, I do feel good about this choice, or you're right, like I don't actually I'm not sure why I'm doing this, which probably means it's not from a good place. But thank you. I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna journal that one and then have a conversation.
I love it. As a therapist who's married to a therapist,
yeah,
well, he has also learned to treat eating disorders in a relationship. I actually know the exact moment you're talking about, where I don't know. I do this thing where I'm like, no, this is definitely a conscious choice, and then he'll be like, what happened there? And it's a little like, well, F you, buddy. I
Right.
thought I was in charge.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It has like, it's it's not always perfect, like I've definitely had like, uh moments where I'm just like, no, I just actually don't like that. I swear it's not like I'll eat something else. It's just I don't like that specific thing. You know what I mean?
I do. And sometimes I'm still really convinced that the no to that thing that I clearly want is not an eating disorder, and that's
Right.
okay. I think that like isn't that
Yeah.
part of the truth of this is that like recovery is not this like abstinence model where like magically you come to treatment and then you never do something ever again and you're cured. Because if that was
Right.
true, I'd be out of a job, I'd be retired right now, you'd be retired right now, life would be so
Exactly.
good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Which kind of leads me to, what did it mean for you to create the Trace app, and how has that experience kind of been for you, especially when you think about your own journey with your body and social media and kind of creating what I've seen so far is nothing but like a actually really safe, wholesome space.
Well, that's great. I love that you've experienced that. I think like, so, you know, I think like for me and, are the co-founders and just like creating Trace, it's like, we just, we want a place that we can celebrate our transition, whatever that looks like. Right. So like, maybe you're taking hormones, maybe you're not, you know what I mean? However, like whatever that looks like to you, and also to be able to like surround yourself with people who are going through what you're going through, have gone through with it, are thinking about it, or are like maybe, like allies, like close allies, right? So maybe like, like Jane Lee's on Trace, right? Like, she's not trans, she's cis, but, she's married, has a child with, a trans person, so just being able to like surround yourself with people who just get it in a way that others don't. And like like even specifically around like what we're talking about today, it's like being able to talk to other trans men who identify on that like binary spectrum of being like, why do we feel like we have to do this? Like why do we feel like we have to have these bodies like to feel good? You know what I mean? And like at what level is it actually a dysphoria thing, and at what level is it just like, like, society, and just like what are we trying to really chase here, and I think you can you can have some of those conversations on the platforms we have now, right? Like right now we're having an awesome conversation on Instagram, right? But there's also just so much that actually doesn't feel safe talking about on platforms like this, and you have to really, not everyone is like Cancer with the Sagittarius rising that could just talk about all the things, you know what I mean? Like be emotional and just spew it all out, like a lot of us aren't like that, and a lot of us crave a space that we can just talk about things and not have to explain it, right? Like, like I come on here and I'll make a post about like not feeling man enough, or feeling, going to my son's baseball game and just feeling like, why do I suddenly care how good my son is at hitting a baseball when I've never cared before? But now I'm surrounded by all these cis men, and I'm like, you hit the ball like this, and like going and having that conversation, as opposed to just like people just like overriding or not overriding, but overlooking what I'm actually talking about, and just being like, you're a good dad, like, and which is an awesome compliment, and I love that. And like, I want to have a conversation with someone who knows what I'm like, who can maybe knows on a personal level, or can understand like those in between the line conversation I'm trying to have. You know what I mean? So I think that's a lot of the motivation behind it. It's just like, where can we go to celebrate who we are and not worry about posting things because, you don't know who's on the app. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. So what's next for you, right? So I know the app is in development. You've got a lot of work going on. What now?
Yeah, that's still it. That's still it. We're still going. This is the thing, right? Like, Trace is like, our baby. We're trying to grow it and feed it and, you know, teach you how to walk and to sing. And also, you know, I still like being a dad is still another full-time job. And I think, you know, overall, just kind of like, I think for me, it's like, how do I, like, even with this conversation, like, you know, I want to be more open about things that have gone on and like who I've always been and things that have maybe like always looked through like rose-colored glasses through Instagram and stuff like that, and just like really have, like, I feel like I've always been open, but I've also feel like I've had trouble bringing things to the surface, so to speak. You know what I mean? And just always allowing other people to ask me instead of being like, hey, I want to have this conversation. Let's have it, you know? So I think just like focusing in on things like that. But yeah, I mean, I got, you know, focused in the lane, getting on, making Trace a real thing, bringing people on there, creating a beautiful community. And yeah, trying to be a good husband and dad, and keeping this journey going, and not letting those voices take over, you know.
I do know. You said that, and a part of me on the inside was just like, oh, that is a thing we have to do every day.
Yep. Yep.
For anybody who's like listening or who watches this later, what words of encouragement would you want to share?
I think the encouragement I would share is that like just don't give up. Don't give up. Like there's like you'll like, even in our conversation today, right? Like you're always gonna have something to fight for, you know. And like maybe it's your fighting between, like, maybe it's your eating disorder now, maybe it's your queerness, maybe it's, you know, rights, maybe it's even just like fighting for your mental health. Like there's always gonna be things to fight for, and like just don't give up on the things. Just keep going. Like it's all, you're not the only one fighting either. Like if there's one, there's a million. And I think we've all learned that in one time in our lives. So just like never give up. Just keep it rocking.
Oh, I love that. Especially as queer people, I think too often we hear, you know, the idea of not giving up. We don't hear it from each other. And I think it's really important for people to see like queer faces saying we want you here as your kind of global community.
Yeah.
That you matter. And it doesn't have, it's going to be hard, right? There's no, being queer means it's going to be hard, and it doesn't mean that it has to be joyless.
Right. No, that's, yeah, I love that. It's like, you know, it's even, you can still have so much fun. Like it's so much fun. Like there's so much fun to be had. And like, you know, sometimes we stand in our own ways, and, you know, sometimes I get it. And sometimes it's like, you know, like just open that door, let someone in, let someone hug you, let someone talk to you, take up some of that space. Like, you know, it's one of the beautiful things we offer to each other is like, you know, come take some space up. Like I'm inviting you to take up the space. I want you to take up the space, and I want to hold it for you. So like, you know, just let people hold you.
I love that. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. If anyone has questions, you can hit the little question button. We have time. If not, we can just keep saying meaningful things back and forth in hopes that it...
My question is, how did you perfectly match your hair color to your glasses?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so long story short, I've wanted to be Elton John and David Bowie most of my life. And so the hair is always a nod to David, and the glasses are always a nod to Elton. So I get frames, and then Arctic Fox hair dye has like the colors that are easiest to mix. And I will sit in the bathroom and I will literally go like this, right? Because I'm an art therapist. So it's like something I'm really good at is color theory, and I will make hair dye that matches my glasses.
It's legit. It's very legit. Like, you know, I don't think you could have, like, you can't make that up, you know?
Thank you. I feel like for me, that's the epitome of my personal queerness.
I love it. I'm into it.
Ooh,
I think
We have a question from Cabe. Hi.
Yeah.
How did you practice patience during your healing?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it was waves. It was like, every day you get a chance to try again. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
like a big thing. It's like you have a shitty day and you just like, you just go to bed. Just go to bed early. The day's shitty, just go to bed. It's okay. 6 o'clock, you just go to 6. Fine. Don't worry. Like you go to bed, you wake up, and like you just, you try to start over again. I started meditating. That was one of the first, like that was one of the biggest things that my therapist really taught me as like an actionable thing I could do. There's like, of course, there's talk therapy, so there's like tons of talking through things and like like analyzing my thoughts and my questions and why, and like asking myself questions that I hadn't asked before. But like the actionable thing I was able to do is like every morning I would wake up and I would meditate. I literally started with 2 minutes, then I did 3 minutes, then I did 5, then I did 10. You know what I mean? And I would go back and forth. But every morning I would make sure that I did that. I would like pull like a divination card to just kind of give me some, guidance for the day. And that would be kind of like my reset. It was like, where I would like, reset on the game. Like you would just reset on the remote and it would be like, okay, like I get to try again today. I get to try again today, and I get to try again. You know what I mean? And then, I think like always thinking like tuning into my body was really helpful in those times. Like that's a lot of the patience too. And I think like meditation helped me be more patient in general. Like I think in general it would just help me like come down and like open back up to the possibility of like a good day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hi, Sam. Good question. Sam always asks good questions. Do you have thoughts on challenging the taboo of asking other trans folks to reflect on how their definitions of gender affirmation are tied to white supremacist, fat-phobic body ideals?
Well, I mean, I think that most of us are fat phobic, whether we want to admit it or not. I think that, white supremacy has laid out the foundation of fat phobia and what we think bodies should look like.
Yep.
And I think like it would be a lie if like I didn't say that there were many times in my life where I believed all of those things, right? And I perpetuated those things onto myself and to other people. And I think that, like, another part of, and that is a challenge also to myself too sometimes, like being more identifying and feeling more comfortable in that like binary space. And I've had like a lot of talks with like binary and non-binary people, like about like, how do you feel, where do you find where you feel like the most comfortable spot? You know what I mean? And I think like I've explored different things to recognize like where do I actually feel good and where do I not feel good, right? Like, and being able to just like recognize those things. But yeah, I mean, I think like, the answer of, I don't know what the answer is. Like the attempts to be better, definitely where I lay in that question, and the foundation of the answer to that question is like, I don't know the answer, but I know that what I have done and what I see other people do is not right. And exploring and having conversations, with like, just BIPOC people in our community and that are open to conversation, and then having conversations with my other like, white binary friends of like, well, what does this mean and why are we doing this, and trying to like break down some of those things has been it's been drastically meaningful and helpful to me. And I believe that with the people I've talked to more times than not has been helpful. And that's like a beautiful thing that, another beautiful thing that like specifically like our BIPOC community brings, but like the openness that we have in our queer community to sit down and talk about hard things and be open to like recognizing that like I have room for improvement, and that, that's only going to help myself. It's going to help my child. It's going to help, so many other people that I come in contact with every day, you know?
Agreed. I mean, we could have an entire live, I'm sure, on white supremacy and fitness culture and kind of
Yeah.
like the reality of, I think, worlds that you and I were both seeped in at one point in time and we understand differently now.
Right. Well, it's
I'm
like
always talking.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say that, like, it's like so clear to me now, right? That, like, if I wasn't white, I wouldn't have been the first trans man on the cover of Men's Health. And that's a pretty clear. I think that's very clear. And if I wasn't binary looking, if I wasn't, you know, passable, if I didn't look a certain way, like, it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? And I think that, like, you know, there's a lot of awesome things that came out of that, right? There's a lot of language. There was a lot of other people brought into the spotlight that didn't look like me. And they, you know, so there was a good ricochet, but there was also like a perpetuation of like not goodness, you know? And it was a peak of my eating disorder. And I was in a very not great spot, you know what I mean? So I think, like, you know, it would be irresponsible and untrue to just be like, oh, like that had nothing to do with any of that, you know what I mean?
Of course.
It wouldn't be a real thing, you know?
We have, let's see, one more question. What advice do you have about starting HRT in the emotional aspect of the process?
Well, that's what my whole YouTube channel was about, was the emotional process. As I said, I'm a Cancer with the Sag rising, so I'm very emotional and I like to talk about it. You know, the emotional process, like, I just like, you just have to like make space for it. That's what I think. Like, I think sometimes you can, and like, even with like Trace, it's like, there's a beauty in people who decide and feel like transition medically is important to them. There's a beauty in the journey. And I think that, like, it's really amazing to see people flourish, right? And I think, like, the emotional side is where you need to talk about it, where you need to have support from other people. And, you know, that was one thing I didn't see at the time when I started documenting my transition, was like, nobody was talking about, like, but how does it feel? Like, what does it feel like when, like, I know that I'm a man, but I live this life, and, like, I don't want to forget the last 21 years of my life, and I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, act like there's no differences, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I was living as a woman now, and now I'm a man, and everything is exactly the same, you know what I mean? Because there's, like, a lot of emotional things, and, like, you're introducing, like, a hormone into your body that hasn't been introduced before, and there are, like, emotional I don't want to say like, there are emotional, you get emotional, shit's different, you know?
Yeah, like, your
Yeah.
body chemistry kind of like
Yeah.
does its thing until everything kind of reaches
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. Like,
and
yeah.
everyone's hormones are different however you were born, so everyone's body's reactions to it is different.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I didn't cry for like 2 years when I first started taking, but I would tell, like, I specifically remember telling my friends, like, I was like really sad, and I was like, I know that I don't have tears and I'm not crying, but I'm crying on the inside right now. Like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now, like, I like crying. I cry all the time. You know, it's very easy for me to access. Cause like you said, like, eventually things level out and you're able to kind of tap back in, you know what I mean? So.
I mean, you can't not be a water sign as someone who is a Pisces. You cannot not be a water
sign. No. It's going to be there. It's happening.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to leave everybody with for today?
Oh man, I feel like we talked about so many great things. You know, I just go back to the concept. Like, I think that if you are hearing this conversation and anything makes you question maybe how you felt about your body or food or fitness, like, I think it's, it's okay to explore. You know what I mean? Like, just like, I think exploration is really important and can help you see what maybe you can't see right now. So, I think just let things resonate. Whatever you like to do, journal about them. If you like to draw or sing or whatever you like to do, you know, think about those things, do those things, and just let yourself kind of explore. I think it's important. So, and maybe you stay exactly where you are because you're in a great spot, and maybe you realize that there's some things that maybe like could shift, and see if it leads to something that feels better in your life.
That. And so to end today, if any of you that have been watching or watches this at any point in time is questioning things about your relationship with food in your body and you'd like any kind of professional help, you can go to the projectheal.org. We have a free clinical assessment program. One of our qualified clinicians can give you an assessment about whether or not you have one, what treatment recommendations we can make. Again, it's free. It's not paid for by one company over another, so we don't have an allegiance to anybody in particular. So it's a great way to kind of get some feedback. And I mean, if you talk to one of us and you don't have an eating disorder and you're struggling, we will still help you figure out kind of where to go. Aydian, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who donated. And remember, today is not the end of Pride. It's actually only the beginning.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.